Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Adumim in Israel. What comes to mind when we think of being blessed? We may conjure up images of enormous wealth or success in some form or another. We may imagine ourselves being loved or worshipped by others, being free of all problems, or constantly immersed in pleasure. We may not attribute all that to some divine source of blessing, but we certainly would regard such a life as blessed. What about the reverse? What do we imagine as being cursed? Endless problems, frustration in every imaginable endeavor, bad luck. These are the classic manifestations of a cursed life. It could involve health, it could involve finances, or it could involve one's general state of mind. A cursed person is one who is not fortunate in anything. In Yiddish, such people are called by the term shlamazel, an all-encompassing word for those who have no luck in anything. Like the blessed, they may not blame all this misfortune on God or on any form of divine providence, but they know a cursed life when they experience it. Much of blessedness and cursedness is manifested in outside things, such as money or material success or failure. It may also come in the form of the physical state of one's body, but a good deal of it is revealed in the mind. This is the true arena of the blessed or cursed life. It is there that these polar opposites really show their cards. The blessed person is one who is happy or satisfied or optimistic. The cursed person is one who is depressed or frustrated or pessimistic. They can even come deeper in the mind in the form of a beautiful outlook on things or a tortured sense of reality. States of mind, such as neurosis or schizophrenia, can be seen as examples of a curse. It is no longer popular to view these mental conditions as examples of curses, since it seems to be a cruel form of judgment over one who merely suffers from some problem in the brain. But in the past, this would have been exactly how they were seen. We now describe all conditions of the mind as nothing more than chemical or electrical states of the brain. The brain is seen as a kind of biological computer, and any malfunction is a glorified version of some problem in a car or a washing machine. It's the water pump or the drain hose or this or that neurotransmitter needing tweaking or some synapse misfiring. It is supposed to run smoothly, but frequently it doesn't. When that happens, we have to tune things up or perhaps add a little more lubricant to make things hum again. When things get too far out of hand, we have to start thinking about the possibility that they are beyond repair. In the case of a car or an appliance, this isn't that big of a deal. We get another one. In the case of the mind, it's the end. Are we better off thinking of mental problems as malfunctions of the physical brain or as curses that somehow infected a person's destiny? There is little question that almost anybody today would take the former if they had a choice. With physical problems, we can understand what is going on and perhaps do something about them. With curses, we are subject to the whims of fate or some divine or terrestrial power, and things are really completely out of our hands. Nobody wants to go back to the dark ages of blessings and curses, of angels and demons, but we all do all the time. When we can or can't do anything about those nagging problems, we curse our fate or we thank our lucky stars. This mental or emotional reaction seems to be hardwired into the human mind. We cannot escape it no matter how much we tell ourselves that it is no more real than the tooth fairy. The Bible is loaded with this outlook. There are blessings and curses all over the place. There's nothing about chemicals or superfoods or mind-energizing exercises. There are emotions and deep thought process and all kinds of issues of coping with life and positive or negative outlooks. But it all revolves around one's relationship with God and not around one's personal health issues. Death and illness were just one more thing that people had to face. They weren't the end-all and be-all of everything. A blessing was seen as a type of channel for divine influence on a person. It was as real as we take vitamins to be. A curse was a parallel channel that worked in the opposite manner. It cut off a person from God in some way and subjected them to the relentless and unforgiving forces of fate. This week's Parsha is called Bechukotai, a long word for a rather short Parsha. It is usually read together with last week's Parsha, which is also quite short. This year they are read separately, so everything goes pretty quickly. Bechukotai means in my laws, or something like that. It introduces a series of blessings that sets the tones for the entire Parsha. This series begins with this word or phrase: if in my laws you follow, and if you keep my commandments and do them. The blessings that are promised from such a choice include the rains falling in their proper time, the land producing abundant crops, and plenty of food to go around. The blessings go on with peace across the land, security, protection, no enemies, fertility, and so much abundance that there is just too much to consume. Then it continues with blessings of the communal relationship with God. There will be a functioning sanctuary which guarantees that God's presence will always be perceived. This is the ideal biblical state of life. It is the promise of a blessed existence. But then the Parsha switches to the cursed mode. Everything is reversed, but it comes in spades. Famine is widespread to the point of starvation. Enemies will defeat you to the point that you imagine them to be there even when they are not. Wild animals will wreak havoc on your security, killing your children and your livestock. The land will ultimately be abandoned. The curses get progressively worse as the people steadfastly refuse to get the message. They maintain their lack of observance of the commandments and their indifference to God. The divine response is the ironic condition of God becoming indifferent to them. The Parsha keeps upping the ante in this regard. Things get worse and worse, and nobody realizes that this is all coming from their relationship with God. They maintain their indifference to God, attributing all the terrible things happening to them to fate or bad luck or whatever. God, in turn, takes their cue and backs off more and more and increasingly subjects them to the whims of fate. Things keep going downhill. Corpses rot over the idols. Cities are destroyed. The nation is exiled. The land reaches a state of utter desolation that even the enemies are baffled by its condition. Fear of everything is the dominant emotion. Nothing and nobody can be trusted, and there is no hope for redemption. But finally, the surviving remnant manages to get a grip on what is happening and realize that it was their indifference to God that brought all this upon them. This is the key to coming to terms with things and for God re-entering their lives. God only pays attention to them when they pay attention to God. This requires a profound sense of humility and a willingness to accept responsibility for their collective fate. But if that barrier can be overcome, there is hope. God will not abandon them forever, and the covenant can be renewed. This is the bulk of the Parsha. It is harsh and unforgiving. It is not easy to read or to hear. Nobody wants to dwell on things like this because it forces us to face the reality of our situation. But the Torah forces us to face that reality, since this is the only way to come to grips with the blessings and curses of life. This is one of the core messages of the entire Torah. Let's zero in on a few of those curses. At the very beginning of the list is the threat to bring upon them a state of what is described as, quote, destruction of the eyes and consumption of life. It isn't 100% clear what these two states are exactly. They could be physical conditions, but they seem to suggest emotional or spiritual issues. Destruction of the eyes is the sense that nothing is going to work out. There is nothing to look forward to since all outlooks are gloomy. Consumption of life is perhaps even worse. It means that the very drive for life that exists within each one of us and empowers us to keep going no matter what opposition we face is no longer there. There is no will to go on. It is the feeling of utter hopelessness in the future. It could also manifest in an oppressive apathy towards everything. Who cares what I do, since nothing really matters anyway? If anything is a curse, this is it. It is a bit strange that these two spiritual curses come right at the beginning of this list of curses. We might expect all kinds of other things to precede them, like crop failure or disease or war. But the Torah is saying that the immediate consequence of abandoning God and the laws of the Torah is a kind of spiritual morass. Things just start to look bad for no apparent reason. A kind of mental or emotional fog hangs over everything, obscuring the person from any sense that things could get better. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. When we think things are hopeless, they become hopeless. Towards the end of this list of curses, there is one that is even more pernicious in its own way. A sense of overwhelming fear will grip everyone. The Torah states that they will be, quote, pursued by the sound of a rustling leaf. They will flee from the pursuit of the sword and fall, but there is nobody pursuing them. What is this curse? Is it worse to fear a real enemy or to fear an enemy that really isn't there? Most people, if given the choice, would take the second option. But this is precisely this curse. You will fear some imaginary enemy who really doesn't exist. It will all be in your mind. This is the cursed state the mind can reach when it has no anchor to stabilize around. If God is forgotten and forsaken, every demon is real. Were these curses the results of some chemical imbalance in the brain? Could they have been resolved by popping a few pills or changing the diet? Modern science might answer yes, but the Torah traces it all back to one cause: the abandonment of God. This is not a popular sentiment today, but that may be a result of the fact that we have largely abandoned God. These curses have a way of rebounding on us. When we abandon God, we look for answers anywhere else. Curses are a part of life, as are blessings. We can choose a life that has more of one than the other, but we must realize that the life we experience is the result of that choice. Blessing is waiting for us all, but only if we recognize its true source. Shabbat Shalom.